Hey guys, I'm Shinta, and for video game reviews, I'm going to do something a bit different. Before the review...
No. If we're doing this right. God, I was terrible when I started this gig. Yeah, that's what we're going with for the new set.
I mean, there's few people that are good at what they do right out of the bat, but looking at how far I've progressed and improved since then, well, I can't watch much of my older stuff even in hindsight.
How you guys have put up with my lacking production values and uneven presenting ability the last 5 years is a bit beyond me. Now, I'm still not that good at cleaning audio, though that might just be my sensitive hearing. I can never tell with this crap. At least my writing quality's always been good, though I always tell myself I should try to find more joke opportunities. I'm just terrible at being funny on demand.
But yeah, I consider the first 4 episodes I produced, on Onimusha Warlords, Batman Arkham Asylum, Gojira, and Godzilla the King of the Monsters, which is where I first established my trend of reviewing tokusatsu adaptations alongside the material they adapt, and Back to the Future, just plain awful, and I refuse to repost those videos over anything else.
There are, of course, other videos from my library missing, but if it's not something involved in my battles with Toei concerning their abuse of copyright takedowns when my videos are clearly fair use, it's videos that I've been asked by the companies politely to take down. Them being my reviews of the other Back to the Future movies along with the Evil Dead trilogy. Yeah, for some of these, you just need to be civil and open a dialogue concerning this stuff.
But these I decided to keep down all on my own as I was new to the reviewer gig, and despite having an idea of what to do, I wasn't really experienced in how I should do it, so they were worse than everything else I've ever done.
Hell, for a time I thought I could make it as a hybrid Let's Player and reviewer, leaving my actual commentary and story recappy critiques in there, and just summarize everything down to a 10 to 20 minute normal review. I kind of thought it was a bit ahead of its time in many respects, considering the advent of things like the Game Grumps. But I decided to knock that off as some friends said they didn't like what resulted.
Anyways, thanks to Patreon, I'm going back over the original videos and the original material, and I'm producing whole new reviews for what was done before, and you'll be seeing them periodically.
2016 seems to be my reset button year. After I'm done with these, I've got to remaster my Black and Black RX videos. Cause Tetsuo Kurata's charisma shall not be denied!
Anyways, Onimusha. I picked this game series to do my first ever review kind of out of the blue, but it did end up shaping how I'd end up mostly specializing in reviewing little-known or overlooked Japanese material. It was what I was interested in, and I thought carving out my own niche would have been better than barging in on someone else's.
Reviewer divs had not exactly been established as a concept or an actual in-joke yet. I was just trying to be polite. And to this day, I try to not cross the review streams of any of my compatriots, though it bafflingly happens more than I'd like.
But yeah, I really like the Onimusha series. Up until Dawn of Dreams, which sucked. But the main trilogy is a solid set of games. Not without issues, looking at you, Demon Siege, but for the most part carrying on the same story of a group of samurai's quest to defeat legendary General Nobunaga Oda.
Huh, that was easy. Now all we need to do is wait for him to be revived as a designer jacket, worn by an overbearing big brother, and sealed in an eyeball.
No, what actually made the Onimusha series so interesting is it was a historical fantasy series. This wasn't Nobunaga's historical death, but the moment of a divergence at the Battle of Okehazama, one of Nobunaga's most significant victories in his campaign. So in the Onimusha series, he is instead revived and empowered through the rest of his campaign to unify Japan, though with a more malevolent bent to the goal, which was actually shared by most of the rulers of the country's provinces, by a group of demons known as the Genma. I said Genma, not Ganma.
Ghost is just screwing with me at this point. I should not be surprised, though. The main Onimusha trilogy was written by Noboru Sugimura, better known for his work on Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, and the Metal Heroes.
Specifically, the best damn Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider Black, where he was responsible for the main story arc of that series.
And with Sentai, he was the head writer from Zyuranger through O-Ranger, after which he left Toei entirely. The presumption for why being due to the executive meddling occurring behind the scenes of O-Ranger, which was in turn caused by real-life events. Yeah, a terrorist attack that had a similar plot of an episode would end up doing that. But the fighting over it went much too far, and ultimately screwed it over instead of guiding it over such rocky terrain with a delicate hand. Because Toei's the kind of company to do things heavy-handed when they intervene.
And while Toei continued to strangle Sentai in its sleep, Sugimura stumbled into work with Capcom and then ended up tasked with rewriting a game that the production staff had decided to scrap and entirely rework from the ground up.
Which would come to be known as Biohazard 2. Yeah, he was responsible for the story of what's considered the best damn Resident Evil game. Well, that one or Resident Evil 4. It's a toss-up, honestly.
It's kind of why I really don't think it was him responsible for what was going wrong the years he was Sentai's head writer, because he was clearly not burned out if he made that instant classic.
I don't even like survival horror, and I loved that game.
I shouldn't say he was the only writer here, though. Showa Sentai head writer Hirohisa Soda was also a big contributor to Onimusha, as was Shin Yoshida, one of the central screenwriters for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, who was responsible for some of my favorite episodes in the later incarnations of that show, including the theatrical feature Bonds Beyond Time. And that's not even getting into the producer, Keiji Inafune, the Mega Man guy, and the later artistic work in the sequels being done by freaking Keita Amamiya of Garo fame.
As you can tell, the Onimusha trilogy are like a nexus, where all of these awesome things I've long been interested in just intersect beautifully. I do believe in Nexus. And half the reason Dawn of the Dreams was so awful was because most of these people were nowhere near it.
Anyways, the Genma are an encroaching threat, with their master, Fortinbras,
Stop laughing!
having contracted with Nobunaga for a mutually beneficial conquest. And in the first game, the samurai Hidemitsu Samanosuke Akechi, based on the real-life man Hidemitsu Akechi, is not so much focused on stopping him, but the other demonic activity around the lands of the Saito clan, after having been asked to come to the region by Princess Yuki, who had told of the supernatural happenings in correspondence to her family's allies. Yuki has been targeted by the Genma for a ritual involving both Fortinbras and Nobunaga, so the ultimate goal is to save the princess and save the world. And Samanosuke fortunately gets some help with that from the Oni, the sworn enemy of the Genma, who act as beneficiaries and protectors of humanity, in that they get involved when things like the Genma try to take advantage of them, but otherwise leave humanity to their own devices. Because they love humanity, and want them to grow without making them reliant on their powers.
The Overlord of Darkness could learn something from them!
As such, the Oni grant Samanosuke a gauntlet that can trap the souls of the Genma and turn that power against them, harnessing it to both reinforce his body and access a group of magical weapons, making him into a great warrior of the Oni. An Onimusha, you could say.
From there, the game takes Capcom's then tried-and-true methodology for making games, a la Resident Evil. Beautiful background paintings depicting a region with a limited amount of interactivity, which are connected to a greater map, and the camera angles we're locked to, giving the illusion that we and the beings we interact with and fight are moving through it, instead of changing what's effectively our perception of that by reorienting the scaling and position of the animated CGI model. God, I missed it when games did this.
It always seemed more realistic than those games that create either these wide open spaces you can't do anything with, or the illusion that someplace is bigger than it is with how limited our perception of it is, due to them trying to scale the experience, with how ridiculous the overworlds could get, and not seeing the fucking dissonance that causes when we know there's other places we could go than what we see, but we're not allowed to.
Insert insult aimed at post-Sakaguchi Square Enix here, especially since they're still overemphasizing the excessively rendered spectacle of their games, more and more over making sure the story is good and it's playable as they have since Sakaguchi left. As have several other companies, which can't seem to understand why all those extra renderable pixels don't make their game better. So why not actually work less on that and making sure it's not a mess, okay? I mean, we're pretty much capped on visual quality deep into the uncanny valley, and there aren't that many people that can differentiate between 30 and 60 frames per second, or pixel widths above 720 as it is.
Then again, this was an early PS2 game, so it's not like, looking back, that this is all that graphically impressive. The characters are pretty much blocked with textures mapped over them, and then strung up like puppets. But there's still a charm to them that even 15 years later keeps bringing me back to these games over some more recent hack and slashers. Help that the puzzles, while the same every time you play through, end up the right type of brain twisters that you never quite remember off the top of your head, meaning you're actively thinking about how to solve them, and all the mistakes made are solely your own and not a result of the game being fucking broken or there not being any clue to its resolution. Or all you end up doing is fetch quest after fetch quest with the shallowest of lore involved. Though Onimusha does end up being mostly based around finding and collecting the right items, with most progression locked out by either key items, which you need to quest through the castle to find, or by these wall tumors that resonate with the power of the Oni weapons you acquire and how much soul energy you've empowered them with. The weapons being the stunning Katana Raizen, the blazing force broadsword Enryu, the swift spinning dual-bladed Naginata Shippu.
What have I told you about doing that?
And lastly, the secret weapon, the Bishamon Sword, which is unlocked either near the end of the game, serving as the ultimate weapon, or when you start the game up if you play on Oni mode, which is in turn unlocked by finding all of the hidden fluoride items in the same playthrough, and then beating the game mode that unlocks. Initially, however, to get the Bishamon Sword, you need to beat a section of the game known as the Demon Realm, which this entity allows you to enter near the end of the game, which serves as a locked tournament where you need to beat greater and greater groups of enemies. It's certainly an endurance test, but ends up being good for grinding up souls needed to upgrade all of the weapons to their best stats, but can be difficult if you've relied too much on spamming magic attacks or have depleted your supply of healing items.
Not help that, to mention other negatives, the combat controls are pretty blocky and stiff. Not necessarily easy for everyone to overpower you, but movement and reactivity to inputs are not as fluid as it could be.
And as it was very much modeled after how Capcom was doing the Resident Evil games at the time, you have a limited amount of health rejuvenating items you can find in the environment. Fortunately, you can also restore health from one of the soul types the Genma generate upon death, but in this game, survival feels a lot more difficult than in the later games of the trilogy.
Though it's a hell of a lot better than Dawn of Dreams, where that game was broken because it never felt as if any of your weapons were doing any damage. Maybe it would be better to say it's more challenging over it's more difficult.
You're not wandering blind, though. The areas change depending on your progress, so it's as much about finding environmental clues to unlock the next part, and not an unrelenting series of hallways containing level-up cannon fodder punctuated by a boss fight. It encourages you to think through things and find the clues. It's clever, though it unfortunately leaves the plot rather bare bones, only punctuated by short cutscenes either depicting the next goal or encounters with other characters, such as Samanosuke's ninja retainer Kaede, who you can infrequently control to achieve special missions throughout the game when Samanosuke is incapacitated and needs assistance, alongside Yumimaru, a young boy Princess Yuki has adopted that is trying to find her, but only ends up getting into trouble because of, well, demons. And then there's Nobunaga's servant, Tokichiro, who regularly tries to coerce Samanosuke into service under Nobunaga.
Which actually is a historical reference. The real-life Hidemitsu Akechi served Mitsuhide Akechi, who years later would turn on and kill Nobunaga, before in turn being killed by Nobunaga's forces, reorganized under Tokichiro. The man was actually named Hideyoshi Toyotomi, who historically is the one that actually succeeded in unifying Japan and ending the Sengoku period this all occurs during. Who would then end up doing a lot of historically divisive things, such as instating the feudal class system Japan would operate under until the 1800s, and an invasion of Korea that pretty much ended with his death and the formation of the Tokugawa shogunate that would lead to Japan's isolationist policies. But hey, he banned all slavery in Japan in the late 1500s because he was so disgusted by foreign traders stealing and selling his people. And even though indentured servitude would persist long after him, that's something, right?
As you can tell from that exposition dump, this game series really is steeped in a lot of Japanese history. No duh, it's set in the past. But doing that never feels like it's making the material inaccessible. It feels more like it's comparable to, say, American Revolutionary soldiers fighting werewolves and the like back when the 12 colonies were in the midst of battling for independence, or Abraham Lincoln being a vampire hunter, or Hansel and Gretel being witch hunters.
That movie was awesome, by the way.
Which, essentially at the end of it, is a case of, This is a great man from history, let's see what happens when he comes across the supernatural. And by doing that, it makes it all kinds of endearing.
Until, of course, Dawn of Dreams, which fucked it up.
The only other character of note is Guildenstern, again a scientist responsible for the creation of the more elaborate and annoying corpse abominations you end up fighting among the Ganma forces. And the dude just loves his job.
Dripping blood and what's this? Oh, a liver.
I hear he likes them with fava beans and a nice Chianti.
His greatest creation yet is Marcellus, which you end up needing to fight a few times, and he is a pain to take down. Though when you do, the demon has the expected, "No, not my masterpiece!" response you'd expect from such beings. Guildenstern would end up being a fan favorite, mentioned in the second game by name, and graduate to main antagonist in the third, where he invents time travel.
It's demonic magic, we don't have to explain it.
Anyways, eventually you succeed in rescuing Yuki and Yumimaru, but getting them to safety ends up being screwed over, and they are dragged through a door to the demon realm, which requires more questing to get a magic bow and arrow to disable the door's locks and follow them.
Fun fact about this. This part of the game is keyed to whether you unlock this one door with a slab on it, but when you put the missing piece on the door, it triggers this cutscene that makes some past regions inaccessible, alongside set of items you might not have been able to acquire before.
Specifically, the fluorite items that unlock the extra play modes, that only become visible in the environment after you acquire an item just before you get the slab.
I bring this up because 9 times out of 10, when I play this game, I screw up going back to find these items, and raising the Demon Realm's door means I can never go back to get them. It's the only thing that botches me 100% completing the game when I replay it.
But yeah, we get the items and can use them after fighting a giant bee woman, and descend into the underworld to save Yuki and Yumimaru from Fortinbras himself, before Nobunaga shows up for the ceremony. At the battle's climax, and a ridiculously long in-game battle of just dodging and recovering from his attacks while spamming magic, Samanosuke is injured, but to take the King of Demons down, the Oni Gauntlet supercharges Samanosuke's body, turning him into his Oni form, allowing him to bisect the beast, which then results in Nobunaga assuming the reign of all the demons, which would slowly end up replacing all the forces in his army. Whoops. But hey, Yuki's safe, Yumimaru is safe, and you set up some sequels that would continue things from here.
And hey, with any luck, maybe like Dot Hack with CyberConnect 2, Capcom will decide to give this franchise another go as more than a time-waster mobile game, and we'll see another historical fantasy involving the chosen warriors of the Oni holding back hordes of demons from devouring the world. Oh, that's right, I need to get back on track with Garo this year, don't I?
Onimusha, I continue to feel, is a great game despite its age. While it could use a more cohesive and ongoing story to everything, which is fixed in later entries, what we're given isn't bad. If you can find a copy, I highly recommend taking a shot at it, as even though it's pretty much ended, it was Capcom's 6th biggest franchise, and it is still spoken fondly of in the right circles.
And with this, at least my reviews of Onimusha are all back, and I can finally move on to doing another Capcom property for my anniversary videos, like Devil May Cry or Mega... Oh, for the love of... Again? Hello? What do you mean there's an Onimusha movie?